Okay, so this is a story wrangling session in which I record myself working with a story. It is usually a complete draft, as is this one's kind of a complete draft. And I'm going to be going through and fleshing it out and showing you my editing process and talking through it as I go. This is sometimes informative, sometimes entertaining, maybe. There is a certain amount of swearing at the Microsoft Word interface. The reason that I do this is I like to show people, A, that my first drafts are as crappy as anybody else's, and B, to kind of let you see how the editing process works, how revising goes, and why I've made some of the decisions that I've made. One of the things that I always found very informative when I was working as a journalist was looking at the edits that the editor had made and saying to myself, okay, why did they change the sentence this way? And usually it was pretty self-evident, and some of those practices get incorporated. So this is also, it's a live, it's not live, I'm taping it, but it's a session that I'm gonna put up publicly so people see what one of my Patreon values is like, which is that if you're at the $5 a month level or above, you do get access to these very sporadic editing videos. I think this is the third one that I've done. I really like doing them, and I think they're informative, so I'm going to keep doing them. So this one's going to go for about a half an hour. We started at 8:30 my time, blah, 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 your time as you watch this video on YouTube, who knows? But we'll go for a half hour. So to place this story a little, this is a Tibet story. Tibet is a secondary fantasy world in which I have 3 novels now based and about 2 dozen stories. For those of you that are Tibet devotees, this is set in the Rose Kingdom, and it's actually a sequel to 2 different stories, one of which is Hoofsore in Weary. If you remember that story from the excellent anthology edited by Jennifer Brozek, it is the story of a centaur sergeant leading her unit from behind enemy lines to hopefully rescue. It is also a sequel to another story called How Brittle All My Bows and Broken My Heart. I believe that's the title, and that is about a Rose Knight set who has PTSD. She's a paladin of sorts. She's been subjected to terrible battles, and she also has suicidal thoughts. And so it's a story of her coming to terms with this. This story is set about, I want to say, 15 years after the Rose Knight story and immediately after the Sergeant story. And its title, which I've been sort of playing around with, is something along the lines of Your Breath of Question, My Life and Answer. Something like that. I'm playing with it still. That's a longer, more poetic title, which I like. A lot of the Tibet stories have these longer poetic titles. It's also intended for Beneath Ceaseless Skies. I'm going to send it to Scott there, who's published a number of the Tibet stories, including, if you remember the one about the dryad, just say the one about the dryad, you know what I mean. Anyhow, so that's this story. Last week I finished it up, or I finished this draft up, and usually my practice is to finish a draft and then put it away for a few days, a week, just enough time to cool off. And I'm about to go through and do a pass that is basically what I call making it make sense, where I am looking at it, I'm running through it, I'm like, did I miss this scene that's sort of in my head that needs to be sketched in, which is going to be the case, I believe, in a couple of cases. I'm also probably going to be doing some tweaking at the sentence level. And as I go, I will read out loud, I will talk out loud, if you have questions, drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to talk about them. If at some point I'll do these live and have it so you guys can ask questions as I go. All right. I'm being very careful not to turn around this mug, and I'll show you why. My brother sent me this, and so you can see it says, it's a saying by John Scalzi, if you think writers like me should shut up about politics and stick to writing, and then the other side just says, fuck you, you're wrong. And so, of course, I am right-handed, so I keep gesture with my right hand and keep the coffee mug in my left. And so the other day, one of my friends said, what does the other side of your mug say? Because all it says to me is, fuck you, you're wrong. And I'm like, oh, that's a hostile message. All right. Okay, so let's screen share. I need incidental music is what I need. Okay. And share. Okay. And so now you are seeing this, and you may, depending on how much you can see, I believe you can see all of it. So this is the Scrivener document that has everything in it. So like here's what I'm currently working on, and actually this is done, and this was not a Tibet story, it was a, I think it's been accepted. We'll just go ahead and move it into there, put it in miscellaneous. Alice piece should go in miscellaneous as well. So that needs to be finished. This is actually has nothing to do with anything. All right. Okay, so here, let's go to the beginning of this. And you can see it's called hospice. And so that should take, that should be reasonably self-explanatory as we go on. All right. Let me be unprofessional and clear my throat, and then we will begin. She would have lain there in the hospital bed forever, feeling the ache of everything in her soul, but the birds were too irritating. Their high-pitched peeps and chirps. Okay, and so like word is like chirps. I don't like this, and I like it because it's those two. You know, they want to do put a U in there or make it chirps, and this is a place where you color beyond outside the lines as far as Microsoft Word goes. And so one thing that you can do, and I think it's actually kind of handy practice to get into, is go ahead and say ignore this spelling. You might want, you know, you don't, is this one that you want Word to, you know, learn forever? Maybe. I mean, I could argue that be like, this would be the Cat Rambo syntax or something like that, but too late for that decision. Anyway, so dear imaginary future biographer watching this, thus we explain chirps. You may put it as a footnote. All right, and okay. We're going to edit now. Their high-pitched peeps and chirrups and the flicker of them through the light coming in from the window. Should I have an adjective there? I really kind of want a nice sensory adjective there. And so I'm going to just put a little marker so I know I'm going to come back in there and fill it in. And the other thing I'm going to do to make sure that this doesn't embarrassingly go to Scott with that is we mark it in a particular color. All right, not red. Never mark shit in red because we associate red with those tests we got back in grade school marked in red. Maybe. We don't like them. They make us feel bad. She would have gotten up and closed the shutters, but a centaur's body presents a special problem for convalescents. And so they had her buckled into a sling that encompassed the entirety of her forelegs and chest and much of her back legs as well. She would have, okay, so let's just, I'm actually going to move this off because I want to look at this. This is a super long sentence, and I don't like super long sentences in the very first paragraph, but at the same time, what do I want to do with this? I don't know. Okay, we'll come back to that probably because we'll do at least, I will do, not we, you will not do it for me. I will do at least one more pass. So I am gonna, there really should be a third line to this. She would have lain there. She would have, okay, so there is a third one. She would have lain there. She would have gotten up. She would have pressed. Okay, so the rule of three, which if you have heard me teach, you know I abide by, is there. But her head ached too dully to be touched. Dully. This is not a great word and I don't like it. Let's just mark that because we're going to fiddle with it. There was a silver, and so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm not letting myself get too distracted by these things that I'm marking, right? And I could kind of stand here and be like, and beat my head against it for 5 minutes or so. But this is the past where I'm making stuff make sense, where I'm making sure that all the missing scenes are supplied. And one of the reasons that I don't want to do too much fiddling at the sentence level is that there will be a pass in which I do that. And if I'm going to be removing paragraphs, okay, I'm relatively safe with these paragraphs because I know I'm not going to ditch these. But there might be a scene that I'm going to get rid of, and in which case, you know, don't fiddle with those lines if they're going into your erased file or whatever. Anyway, there's a little silver Kong. Let's see, a little silver Kong sat on the bedside table. I sat on the table within reach. So we're just, what we're doing is we're kind of trying to supply things as the reader needs them. Okay, so we have those long sentences. So she picked up the tiny hammer beside it and tapped the precise center. There was no sound, so she tapped again, perplexed, then several more times. Okay, the picture, and it could be two tap instead of and tapped. Let's do that, because for one thing, okay, so and this may or may not be interesting to you. I like the sound of two tap, and so and then tapped. So I want that two tapped, and I want that to be like the gong, and you'll see why in a second. Despite the fact it's making no sound, and for those of you that read it ahead, you know already. A curtain fluttered. Okay, flutter's an okay verb, but there's surely a better one. So that's the matter of the very, very fine tuning. Let's mark it as the. Okay, so this is why we read out loud, because we remove the does. All right. She was a little human, shaped like a dumpling, and smelled of astringent cinnamon and mint. Once, she snapped. Only do that once. Multiple times means it's an emergency. You should know better, Lady Calinandra. Okay, is that the name we're going to stick with? Probably. I don't know. Sure, let's say learn spelling, and that will make sure that we're always spelling it the same way. Okay, so now we can see this little red squiggly. So one of the things that I'm doing in this is I'm also addressing those red squiggly lines because often they do indicate issues. And you might as well fix typos now. I just like fixing typos. It makes me feel like the world is in order. Calinandra. Okay, and so one of the things you do want to think about is like when I'm reading this story out loud, is that going to be a pain in the ass to pronounce? And in that case, I'm going to let it stand right now. Okay, so that was Calinandra. That was hers again now rather than Sarge, the only name she'd heard from anyone's lips for years. And with it, okay, so let's make sure that we don't have a sort of ambiguous it. So we say, and with the name, all the complicated weight of the Rose King's complicated social structure, but only if she accepted it. Okay, and so this is deliberate repetition, right? I might be like, oh, I can't use complicated, but I want that sort of sense of wheel within wheel, right? Complicated weight of the complicated social structure. Okay, all right, but only if she accepted it. Close the shutter, she ordered, re-summoning the imperiousness of a noble with unsettling ease. The birds are too loud, but the nurse shook her head. Doctor says, take you outside into the sunlight, she said, and began the long unbuckling process. Okay, that's a pretty good beginning. I'm pretty happy with that. We know she's a centaur. We know two of her names. We know she's in a hospital. We know that she is recovering. And so one of the things you want to do so first few paragraphs, what needs to happen? This will be familiar to people that have taken my classes. You set up the world, you set up the character, and you set up the conflict, or at least imply what the conflict is, and you set the tone. So I think all of this is done here. This probably will therefore remain the beginning. And that is one of the questions that you do in passes like this. Will this be the beginning? And yes, at least unless things change drastically, that is indeed the case. All right. And so moving on. And so one of the things we're going to want to do is put scene breaks. So I'm not going to bother with formatting this right now and doing the whole, select, center, remove indent. Not at the moment. I'll do that because at some point I will export this to Word, and at that point, all of that bullshit, tedious formatting acidinery will take place. I'm sorry. Was that out loud? All right. Yes, I don't like formatting. Well, and the reason I don't like formatting is it always is, it feels inefficient. And I'm so aware that if I were better at writing scripts, I could just write a macro that would run through and just, go boom, 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 and take all of my scene breaks and fix them. And I keep resolving to it's like one of those skills. It's like good humans. I don't mean to say if you don't know how to script, you're not a good human, because that would mean I'm not a good human. I think I would be a more efficient human if I would take a couple months and brush up on my scripting, because I did actually help document VB script, or help with the error messages. So you think I would know this. All right, anyway, digression again. Boom, we have shifted scenes. Okay, that's why we have a scene break to signal a change in location or a change in time. The hospital's main courtyard was graveled. I don't like that. Let's say paved with gravel. And I want, okay, so it's pea gravel. And if you're familiar with pea gravel, that is gravel the size of peas. Do I want something? What would be good? Wheat? Like what would be, I want to use something, maybe, I don't know, I can use something. And I'm going to use a secondary, I want something that reflects this world, so we'll see. Iron cages of roses set at intervals. Their planters topped with enormous hooks to allow them to be moved more easily. This was one of the places where this was one of the hospitals. Okay, I said hospitals and typed healing sanctuaries. That was deliberate, not just the Alzheimer's kicking in. Why healing sanctuaries rather than hospitals? I've used hospital before. This has a better secondary world feeling. I usually don't like one of the, but I do want this sense of units. So I'll leave that. Where the rose knights were tended as well, and she presumed the plants to be used to repair their living armor, laid along the flesh and growing into, with it through magical means, a process laborious and painful, she had been told. Okay, that's a little dry, but I'm worried it's a little telly, but we'll see what the beta readers think, or the editor thinks, or whoever creates it. Everyone does what they can in the service of the empire. She wanted to ask the nurse if any of the others had survived, but the woman had overseen, clearer, her transfer to one of the padded, to the, so here we can just say, padded wooden dais meant for centaurs. Now I look at the word dais, I'm like, is that spelled correctly? I'm not, yeah, sure, whatever. And then abandoned her to the sunlight. Okay, so I'm looking at kind of like, where was sunlight earlier before? And in fact, that's, yeah, that's okay. That's a fine repetition. She wondered how long she would be left there. It was not the first time she'd wanted to ask. Let's go ahead and shorten that up. She wanted to ask. There had been plenty of opportunity. What? Because that if is indefinite, right? I don't even know what that it stood for. The things preventing her. What thwarted her? What if the answer was no? Okay, and so notice that one of the things that we've also done already is we have established a convention for thoughts. We don't have she thought. We just drop into italics and it is thoughts, thoughtland, so to speak. All right. This dais was close to the entrance of the hedge mages. Blah, 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 blah. I always try to do this where we can. And so notice what that does. What does that do? That removes of the, it trims the words. I will say I'm kind of disappointed. Let me digress again. I actually thought this was going to be a novelette or novella, and it clocked in at 5,690 words at the moment. And usually in an edit like this, 10% of the excess drops away as I trim, or maybe less. I don't know. I'm getting better about that. But so I'll be curious about missing scenes because I would like to move it into novelette length. It felt like a novelette when it came to me, and I want this to be a thoughtful, slow burn of a piece. I had, in fact, some worries about how slow it will be, but basically I want to add some more stuff. So I'll be curious to see where I can add stuff. Anyway. What thwarted her? What if the answer was no? It was Dave. Hedge made a figure sat there on the long gray stone bench. We don't need, do we need all these words? We don't. I want long. Long is more important than gray. Oh, sunlight. Too much sun. What is a synonym for sunlight? Let's see, where the sun fell. Where the sun fell. Now we're actually putting in words. We added a plus one word, but that's okay. The surface on her lives in green, a rose night. In her outstretched palm, a handful. Do we have scattering? One of the things we'll do is we'll do a word frequency check, but that's okay. A scattering of pale flaxseed, two tiny birds wandering along with thorny fingers to pluck it out, pluck at. Pluck is the wrong word because it applies threads, so pick at. To pick at. So can I remove this and be like to pick at the seed? Scattering of pale, yes, sure. Let's just go ahead and do it. So again, we're adding words, but it's making it clearer, I think. So the reason that I'm hesitant is this, right? I know what flaxseed looks like. I'm not convinced that all of my readers do. So we'll see what Scott, an editor who doesn't do a lot of cooking, we'll see. All right, in the jungle, there have been tiny birds like that. They're snakeworm. Let's just always, I like splitting up sentences. The snakeworm had coaxed them sometimes, caught them from the stew pot, meager mouthfuls, but by then they'd been used to surviving on scraps and shadows. And then what if the answer was no? Okay, and so why the repetition? I want this sense of obsessive thought, and probably this phrasing will come up at least one more time. All right. Her injuries were enervation and starvation. Okay, and so I don't know that injuries is the right word. And if I were really procrastinating, I'd go look up the definition of the word injuries. But I got 5 more minutes of doing this before I stop recording. So just mark it. Okay, again, oh, Catherine, you are just semicolon. And that's it. Okay, so why am I breaking it up? Boy, if it was nothing but long sentences filled with semicolons, you guys would be like, this woman cannot write. So that's one of the idiosyncrasies of my style that I'm aware of. If you are a writer, be aware of those idiosyncrasies. If you are prone to use the word eggplant over and over again, yank it. One of the things I hit recently is I was looking at the edits for the novel that's coming out with Tor. I've been going through and accepting the edits. And I was searching on the word orb, O-R-B, because there's an orb. And I was making sure that it was consistently capitalized. And the thing that I discovered is there's like 500 instances of the verb absorb. So I have to do a pass, basically an absorb pass, where I absorb some of those instances and swap in different verbs that somehow convey the sense of absorbing without repeating the word in a way that would, I think at least one reviewer would notice and then just mock the fuck out of me for it. So let's avoid that. Thank you. All right. 4 more minutes of this. Actually, who knows? I could just go wild. This could be 2 hours. Only you know for sure because you can look at the time. I don't. You get hit by a meteor and this never surfaces. Oh boy, that's more of a thought. Anyway, procrastinating again. Her injuries were enervation and starvation. It was not a matter of bones reknitting, but of flesh being coaxed back into a semblance of life after having conserved itself for so long. For so long, on so little, after having been burned so close to the edge, as well as a secondary load of parasites accumulated during the weeks of travel to the jungle and swamp, seeking the coast, traveling by night most of the time, wary of the enemies around them. Her only scars were leech round. Her only physical scars were leech round. So we split this off. Why do we split this off? Because anytime you split a sentence off like that, it requires extra narrative weight, and I really like that because I want people to think about that word physical, or only physical scars. But it felt as if she had been emptied of herself, poured out unrelentingly without replenishment. They offered her a choice of crutches or a wheeled cart. This really should have happened earlier. So what I probably need is relapse scene here. So let's just put relapse. Let's think about that. Okay. So one of the things that I want to think about that, because I do have a kind of like she relapses into fever scene later on. If I'm going to do that, I'm probably going to want to do rule of 3. And there's going to have to be a significant thing to the third one. So I already have one. So I'm going to look for another place to put one in. This is a possibility. I don't know. Anyway. Or actually, maybe I don't. Okay, so I'm totally changing my mind on all of that. Because I think what happens is these two scenes need to be consolidated. Okay, there's sunlight. What that does is move this. Okay, so this. I'm sorry, I wasn't talking at all, was I? I was just sort of staring absently at the. Okay. Actually. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. Okay, so let's put this. So I'm going to put. Along the path. Using her crutch to Okay, so let's do this. Here we go. Okay, so let's see if this makes sense. And in the jungles, I don't want in the nights. Oh, I see. This is the nights. No, this is the hell. Okay, let's see if this makes sense. She wanted to ask the nurse if any blah, 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 blah. They offered her a choice of crutches or wheel cart. She made her way to the courtyard. A journey would take a second now. A handful of mud beach some except for the fence like that. It was part of gravel. Placing her crutch. She wanted to ask. At her elbow. If any of these, but the one. While she was thinking about how she might phrase it, the woman oversaw Okay, she wanted to ask. There had been plenty of opportunity. What toward her, what the answer to this dais was close to. The figure sat there among something with there. Oh, this is really nice. Okay, so this all makes sense. The ordering doesn't um, 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 okay, so this works pretty well. We don't need this. Goodbye, sparrows. You are gone. Oh shit, we've gone over. Okay, so we've been going for 34 minutes. So let me just finish. I will go to here. My flesh, click the barky growth. That was her living armor. Half scowl, resting bitch face. She was older than any of the knights Kellen had ever seen. A ring with flowers, a bouquet bracelet made of wilted pinks up until the birds hopped around. And she looked past them to nod. Oh shit, no, she's doing it. I really should. Okay, so you can see here, like, so what's going on here? Let me type. Oh, no, let's see. Okay, step to right, hurry back. Okay, so that works. Okay, so I think I've made it make sense. Um, Hopefully at some point I'll read out loud and it'll make more sense. But the reason that this happened, as I started to say, is because I wrote two different chunks at two different times. And that's one of the problems with doing that with stories sometimes, is you end up rewriting pieces, you end up kind of making things not jibe. And that is why this pass is why I call making it make sense. All right, stopping the share. Thank you for sharing this time together. I hope it was informative. If you have questions, drop them in the comments, or I'm going to post this certainly on a Patreon as well. If you've got comments over there, let me know. Again, what was the name of this story? Your Breath a Question, My Life an Answer, or something like that. I hope that this was useful. Now I'm going to stop recording. Thank you for spending this time with me.